When did doing the right thing horribly backfire? I was in an extremely weird and once-in-a-lifetime kind of car accident, where I was supposed to be not at fault. I really don't want to go into detail, but another car hit me going twice the speed limit, sending both of us rolling down into a ditch. I got out through the windshield since it was shattered and was able to cut the airbag. The other car was in much worse shape and was on fire. I ran up to see if the driver was okay, but she was falling in and out of consciousness. Her car was upside down and the roof was caving in, pressing her into her seat. The seatbelt was tight around her and her airbag wasn't deflating. I struggled with the door and was able to get her out as the fire spread to her. I remember passing out a little after I was able to put out the fire on her legs. Woke up in the ambulance, broken leg and concussion. EMTs said I was only able to save her from all the adrenaline coursing through my system. The police that wrote the report found her at fault and said I was a hero, but no good deed goes unpunished. She had first-degree burns on her legs and face and had super cheap-ass insurance. She ended up suing me and dragging me into a 4-year legal process that not only cost my insurance thousands, but had me spending money on legal fees and lost wages from constantly having to go to court. It was finally settled because somehow all she needed to prove was that I was at least 1% at fault and my insurance folded. She was awarded my full liability, $200,000, plus $25,000 that I'm on the hook for personally. I was able to get my car paid off and whatever was left in my pocket for a new car had to go to her. It's been 6 years since the accident and I still owe about $12,000, but I'm trying to avoid paying that. The last time I talked to my attorney after she was awarded damages, he said something that I'll always think back on and wish I could have changed my actions. He said if he was in my shoes and knew the outcome, he would have left her there to burn. At least you know when you're in a situation where you have no time to think, just react, you do the right thing and fight for the stranger's life. People like you reinvigorate my goodwill towards others. Sure, it ended poorly, but no matter how cynical that woman's actions may make us, you are the saving grace that keeps us inspired and willing to bear ourselves. What? I literally cannot comprehend why so many stories on this thread involve people suing their saviors. Human greed knows no bounds. It makes me want to live alone in the wilderness. In one of my previous scripts on lawsuits, there is a trend of this happening in America. Sadly, it seems that when people do get into life-altering situations, the only way they can recoup their losses is by suing anyone they can who was even tangentially involved. It's awful, but it's true for that country. I was in the parking lot of a store one time when a lady dropped a bunch of stuff off her cart. She was having trouble picking up the box of bulk items. I told her that I would help her and we both picked the box up and put it in the trunk of her car. She then sprayed me with pepper spray and screamed. I was left confused as to why I was attacked as she almost ran me over driving out of there. I was at a club and saw my friend's girlfriend sitting in a booth, not looking so great. I decided to go over to help her. I told my friend he should probably take her home and helped her to start walking outside. She then threw up all over my sports jacket. At that point, I had vomit all over me and the bouncer wanted her gone ASAP, so I had to leave the club in a hurry. In all the excitement, I forgot that I had left my tab open, which at this club required both your driver's license and credit card. By the time I realized this, I was 25 miles away, with no hope of going back. I called another of my friends who was still there to close it for me. He called back to say that they didn't have my ID or credit card, but that the bartender had given him someone else's ID instead. He was pretty drunk, so I wasn't sure what was going on. I later called the club about 20 times and went back there, but no ID or credit card. I saw a woman litter right next to a trash can and I was walking behind her. As I thought I was out of her peripherals, I picked up the trash and threw it away. She apparently saw me and for some unknown reason became belligerent as if I had just insulted her. She then proceeded to try and hand me more trash whilst exclaiming fairly irately that if litter bothered me so much I should throw it all away. One of the weirdest encounters in my life. So here is my story. It was Christmas Eve night a few years back in Kansas City, Missouri. There was a considerable snowfall and the city was having one of our worst winters in years. I was leaving my girl's house around 11 p.m., who lived about 8 minutes away from where I stayed. Normally, this would be a quick zip down Blue Park and I would be home, but there was already about 2.5 inches of snow, and my car was a beater, but I was managing. As I'm heading down the road, I see a guy and his kid, I crap you not, without a coat, standing in front of a car in a liquor store parking lot. Now, I could give two craps, honestly. If an adult got himself in trouble normally, I would keep going. But I honestly felt bad for the kid, and he had to be cold with no coat and all. So anyhow, I pull up and ask him if he needs a jump. "Nah, dog, I got a bad starter. It screws up when it's cold," the man replies. After I figure out it's nothing I can help with, I ask if he would like me to call someone. "Nah, homie, but if you could give me a ride to my house, that'd be cool as hell." His street was about 3 streets back down the road, so I figure no big deal. Him and his kid huddle in the car. At this point, I notice the man reeks of marijuana and is probably high. Now, the important thing to remember in this story is that the main street I was on was an emergency snow route, meaning it had been pre-treated and the plows had already run through it. This, of course, makes the snow at the entrances to side streets higher and a bit more packed, a fact I hadn't really considered until I turned into his street and I got my front 2 tires stuck completely in snow. When it was clear I was stuck and couldn't go forwards or backwards, the man said, "Ah, crap, my bad, man. My house is pretty close from here. Good looking out, though," and then proceeded to get out of my car and walk to his front door. A front door I could see from my car that was stuck. He did not offer to help me get my car unstuck, not that we could with the 2 of us, nor did he offer to let me come in and wait for a tow truck. I ended up spending Christmas morning that year hanging out at a 7-Eleven for about 6.5 hours waiting on a tow truck. A friend of mine was walking down the street late at night when he saw a man lying in an alleyway. The guy looked as though he'd been hurt really bad and was asking for help. My friend approached him to find out how badly he had been hurt and what he needed to do. When he did, a bunch of guys ambushed him, beat the crap out of him, and stole all his money. The whole thing had been a setup just to lure him into a vulnerable situation. It's freaking terrible to take advantage of someone else's kindness like that. I read a story of a man driving in the middle of the night on a street surrounded by cornfields when he saw a man laying in the street ahead, not moving. He contemplated helping, but ultimately decided he should find help ahead to play it safe. He carefully drove around the body and slowly drove off, and when he looked in his rear mirror, he saw the body stand up and slink away into the cornfields. Most likely, there was an ambush waiting. It's truly sad that the moral of a lot of these seems to be, don't help people who look like they're in need. I would hope that we can refine it to assess the situation, but I guess we know that isn't always possible in the heat of the moment. Gave a one-eyed homeless guy $5. He wandered off, apparently telling other homeless guys his good fortune. Homeless guys began melting out of the scenery, asking for their $5. I realized my mistake at that point and stopped being generous. They apparently turned their anger on one eye and stabbed him for his $5. I found out when questioned by police. Reminds me of an incident in high school. We used to drive down to a liquor store in Newark, New Jersey, to buy beer. There was always a crowd of homeless outside, and you'd frequently get back to your car to find a bum going through your ashtray for change and such. Anyway, the biggest of the homeless guys was Daryl. For the price of 1 beer, Daryl would watch your car and even escort you back to make sure no one hassled you. Well, one time, a buddy feels bad for Daryl and throws him $5. That was it. The price of going for beer went from 1 Meisterbräu, $5 per 12-pack, to $5. Being that a 12-pack and a pack of smokes totaled $7.50, this was an unacceptable tax. A new, disreputable liquor store had to be located. I was walking to the garage through the main lobby of the hospital I work at, I'm a nurse, and saw a woman sprawled across the floor with her family around her. I ran over to help and asked, "Are you okay?" Good lord. This woman sits straight up and starts screaming.
Did she just ask if I'm okay? Did she just ask me if I'm okay?
And proceeds to throw punches at me. They all missed, even though I was in WTF mode. Apparently she just found out a family member passed away and had fallen to the ground from shock. I had 2 good friends who dated for a very long time and fought like miserable spouses. We all know that couple. So they finally break up and the dude has to move out. I didn't want to get involved in their messy breakup, so I declined him when he asked to stay with me. Fast forward a few days and he gets kicked out of his friend's house, who lives with his mum, and can't go home to his parents because of his new job. So I begrudgingly say yes because I know I would hope for the same generosity in that position. A few weeks go by with no drama, and then I have to go out of town for 2 weeks. I'm glad to have someone watch the apartment. My landlord calls me a few days later saying my shower leaked and flooded the downstairs apartment, causing over $2,000 in damage to both my apartment and the downstairs one. My friend denies the whole thing, will not admit he did anything wrong, and also refuses to help me pay for it. I got kicked out, never got my security, and had to pay an additional $1,000 because of a clause in the lease saying it was my responsibility to maintain all plumbing. I let another driver get in front of me in the fast lane when I could have sped up and blocked him. He sped up to about 80 miles per hour, and a half-mile down the road from me, he rear-ended a car that blew a tire and wrecked. I did not check the news to see if anyone had died, and never will. A lawyer friend of mine represented a guy pulled over for speeding or something, who was asked by the officer, "Do you have any firearms?" The man responds honestly, "Well, I have one locked up at home, but not on me." Turns out, since the time he legally purchased and registered his firearm, Congress had passed a law making it a federal felony for anyone ever convicted of domestic assault to own or possess a firearm. Problem is, even though the Commonwealth had a list of people convicted of domestic assault and a list of people with registered firearms, nobody let our guy know that when he answered this question a bit too honestly, he was confessing to a federal felony with a minimum sentence of 5 years in the pen. My laptop had just died when I found a MacBook Pro at a park with no one around to claim it. I hung around the laptop for half an hour and no one came forward. I tried to find the owner, but it was password protected and I didn't want to mess with it. My wife, being the ethical angel on my shoulder, convinced me to turn it in with the caveat that I could keep it if no one claimed it. I took it to the police station. Before I handed it over, I asked about their found property policy, and the desk person said, 90 days, and if it isn't claimed, it's yours. Sweet, I might get a free laptop without the guilt of stealing it from someone. So I went to my car and got the laptop and turned it in. The detective saw the laptop and said, "Oh, not computers. We destroy those after 90 days. Gosh darn it." Haha, well, I do understand the policy for the sake of protecting the data and info of the owners, but still, a major bummer. I walked out of a bar and saw a man and woman assaulting a homeless man. The homeless guy was about 5'4" and about 110 pounds, and he was already down on his knees. The man and woman were both Samoan from their looks, so they were big. Very big. She was about 6'1" and about 220 pounds, and her male companion was really, really big, about 6'5" and over 300 pounds. I ran up to them and told them to stop, which was a really big mistake on my part. I should have just yelled police or something to get them to stop, but hindsight is 2020. The woman came after me and her friend tried to flank me, which is super dangerous for me at this point. I'm 5'10" and 200 pounds and can handle myself, but this is quickly becoming something I cannot handle. I pulled my knife before she could get to me, and her friend could get behind me. Her big companion saw that I was not fricking around now, and that I will not go down without a serious fight. As a side note here to anyone who is assaulted, never go down in a street fight. You're defenseless and can easily be very, very hurt, crippled, or killed. Real life is not the movies, and people do not stop beating you because you're defenseless. On with the story. The big Samoan guy grabbed her and held her and said that I had a knife and to let me leave, and I do. I walk/jog the hell out of there, and I'm about a block away when I hear a loud yell. As I spin around, I see the woman running full speed at me, and I have just enough time to get my hands up and spin her into the street, and her boyfriend about 50 yards behind her at full run towards me also. She starts swinging at me hard, not like some dainty girl, but really trying to knock me out. Remember, she outweighs me by 20 pounds, and I have her huge guy friend now barreling down on me from behind. I decide to knock her out, and I unload everything I have into her jaw. She goes down instantly and is out cold. I turn to face her boyfriend, who is now about 10 yards away, and I see him just stop cold and look at her laying in the street. He just walks past me and picks up her head and looks at me. At this very moment, some guys who saw me basically just knock some girl out without any context yell something and start running toward me. They're about a block away. The big Samoan guy looks at me with a really sad expression like he's really sorry for everything and just says, "Run." And I do. I fricking run like someone is trying to kill me because those guys who saw me hit her are fricking coming to kick my butt, and there are a bunch of them. I run to my car and I get the heck out of there. I get away, and I have never told a single person about this incident until right now. I have never been so scared as I was that night. My best friend was going through a messy breakup with his girlfriend. She was teed off, so she stole a whole bunch of his clothes and his cat and drove off to her apartment. We jumped in my car and gave chase. She pulled into her apartment complex and parked before realizing we were behind her, so I pulled up behind her and blocked her car in. She started screaming at me to move my car, and I said, "Frick no," while my friend called the cops. He had had the cat for 8 years and was desperately attached to it. He had only had the girlfriend for 2 years. The cops get there and they talk to everyone. They figure out the situation, they tell the girlfriend to return the cat and the clothes. Then an officer comes over to me and says he's considering arresting me for false imprisonment. My fricking jaw dropped. Normally I'm super respectful and cool with the cops, but it was just too much for me to swallow. Are you kidding me right now? Not at all. You put your car behind hers, making it impossible for her to leave. You kept her there against her will, and that's a crime. She could have gotten out of the car and walked away at any time. I was only stopping her from fleeing the scene with stolen property. Oh, are you a police officer now? Is that your job? I stare at him sullenly, a look of, "You can't be frickin' serious," on my face. I guess we don't do anything at this time, but next time you shouldn't get involved in disputes like this. It's a matter for the police, and you should leave it up to us. God, what a fricking mess that night was. I offered my seat to an elderly lady in the bus. Turns out she wasn't that old and felt offended, so she screamed at me. At which point you tell her to F off and say, "Fine, I guess you don't deserve any courtesy," and proceed to sit back down. Almost the same thing happened to me. Old lady didn't scream at me, but she said in a very catty tone, "Don't think you're doing anything special." But she did sit down in my place. I have fallen prey for this one before. Folks, you should still do it anyway. Just brush off the annoying prideful ones who scream at you for trying to be decent. Or, as another commenter puts it, kick her in the shins. Old ladies have weak bones. When I was young, I was able to save money very well. No bank or anything, just a wooden box under my bed that used to hold dominoes. Every week I would cash my paycheck, put the vast majority in the box, and keep a little pocket money for myself. When I was 18, I worked at a video store. Everyone who worked there were very good friends. One day, we were told by our boss, a really great guy named Drew, that he had come down with stomach cancer. I talked to him afterwards and was sad to hear that the store's terrible insurance was causing Drew to have to choose between treatments or paying his rent. Drew was gay and his family had disowned him, so he had no help. I thought about it for a few days and decided I would help him out. I agreed to loan him money so that he could pay his rent. He would pay me back when able and everything would be great. I gave him $3,000 I had saved since I was 12. A little over 3 actually, but who's counting, right? Cut to 5 months later, I come to work to see Drew being dragged out by police. Turns out he had a massive white powder problem and had been stealing from the store. He was such a good guy, I actually fought for him at work for a month or so until I saw the evidence. I also learned that he had never had cancer. It was a scam that he had used on several friends of his, so he and his boyfriend could get high. I've never been able to get back to where I was financially. I'm not sure what changed. Maybe because I got a bank account. Maybe emotionally it messed me up. I'm not sure. I have $60 to my name now. One thing is for sure, I have never trusted people the same since. Not sure anything will be able to give me that back. In the 7th grade, gave a choking girl the Heimlich maneuver, saved her life. No one else knew how, and was suspended for 5 days for sexual harassment. Her parents tried to sue, but it went nowhere. You've got to be kidding me. Weren't there any faculty present that saw it? Or was it the girl who claimed harassment? The security said I was rubbing myself on her or something. The girl was thankful, her parents were the really upset ones. The school blew it out of proportion. A work friend of mine was going through a nasty divorce. Even though it wasn't finalized, he was seeing another woman at work on the down low, but everyone at the office had suspicions. Having dealt with divorce before, I sent him an email explaining that people were talking and he may want to be more discreet so as to not exacerbate things with his divorce. He told the down low girl what I had said. She told me to mind my business. I explained over and over again that I meant well and it was nothing against her. She convinced him not to talk to me anymore and we haven't spoken since. My wife and I were flying from Montreal to Vienna 2 years ago. We were flying coach, so of course we're the last to board. I see a lady sleeping in the waiting room at the gate. Good Samaritan that I like to think I am, I gently wake her and ask if she's going to Vienna. She says that, yes, she is, so I tell her that it's final boarding. Away we go, and she gets on behind us. As we're taking our seats, she goes by us and we smell the alcohol vapors. Oh no. Anyway, we get our seatbelts on and they start pushing the plane out to the taxiway. The flight attendants go through the cabin, checking seatbelts. But when they get to the drunk lady, they can't wake her up. So, overcome all the flight attendants, shaking her, trying to wake her up. Finally, they start calling for a doctor on the flight. Someone speaks up and is a nurse. They try and fail. So, back the plane goes to the gate, on come the EMS and haul her out. 2 hours later, we're sitting at the gate while they try to find her luggage to pull off the flight. I sank deep into my seat and hoped like heck no one saw me wake her up to get on the flight. My friends in college had to kill and dissect mice. There were way too many etherized mice for the class, so they got the leftover little dude and carefully revived him, gave him water, stroked his fur, and took him outside and released him on the lawn outside the cafeteria. Free crumbs for life. He made it several yards before a bird swooped down and grabbed him. I saved a bird that was stuck in a fence. It was a wooden privacy fence, and the bird had managed to get its head stuck in between 2 boards on the fence. All I had to do was grab the bird and lift it up above the boards. Anyway, it pooped on me. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.